and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Mr. Chairman, Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the approval of minutes from the June 29th meeting. Are there any changes, comments? The motion to approve? Yes. Second, all in favor, aye? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is public comment. Do you have anyone sign up for public comment? No public comment? Okay. Moving on, Secretary report, Secretary Bennett.
Who was that? Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, good morning. I wish I had really good news about peak flows being off the chart on the high side, but they're really kind of off the chart on the low side. Struggling with stream flows every place in the state. We are looking at got a report yesterday that you can walk across the Animas River and only get ankle deep. That's going in feet first. The river south of the Isleta diversion is really anemic. Get down to my part of the world in Berlin, and you can cross the stream system about like where it ends. When we get ankle deep there. My understanding is this water is not making it all the way through Open View Reservoir, so there's some drying of the stream system, and it's a real concern for corporations and for water users this year. We'll hear later that the Rio Grande Conservancy District is going to have to cut their irrigation season short this year because of lack of stored water. Open View Irrigation District has they finished up their season, I think, a month ago. The allocation for the New Mexico farmers was 10 inches, while the allocation for the Texas farmers was 36 inches. Open View Reservoir, director Longworth will cover some of the levels in that, but it is critical. This is a very difficult time for water administration. Some of the activities that I've been involved with in this last month, my general counsel, Greg Ridgely, and myself attended a Western States Water Council meeting on July 30th through October 3rd in Newport, Oregon. And they're experiencing the drought. They're talking about curtailment of municipalities on some of the surface positions because of lack of stream flow. While the vegetation and everything looks healthy, they're not getting the summer rainfall that they've experienced in the past because of the line. So even our neighbors to the north and where you think is typically wet, we are experiencing drought conditions. I was in Dallas a couple of 3 or 4 weeks ago, and everything is brown. They are experiencing, while they have reservoirs that are full of water, the rainfall is just not coming to that side of the country either. So we're in this drought situation, but we're not alone. this, and well, the next couple of years may be a little difficult. We seem to manage through and come out stronger on the other side. In the last month, went with Myron up to the Piccaries to their feast day. And Myron, could you give us just kind of a short briefing on some of the accomplishments that we've made with the tribes, brothers, and nations in this last couple of years?
Absolutely, State Engineer. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning, everybody. Glad to see all of you again. Yes, State Engineer is correct. Over the course of time that he's been here, we visited pretty much all of the Pueblos tribes. Good morning, Commissioner. How are you, sir? But we've gone to visit most of them, and it's been a good run here. Let me just give you a sense of where the agency has gone with the outreach from the State Engineer's office. The engineer came on board in 2015. He was appointed by Governor Susana Martinez, as we all know. He had several priorities, and 3 of them were state water planning, adjudication, and active water resource management. With state water planning, outreach became better. We hired a new water planner, and it was Cia Sanchez, and she's done a great job with this process with the regional water planning, and now with the state water plan drafting out there and available for comment. That was done, and then State Engineer sent out last fall, inviting everyone to consult with us if they wish to on state water planning. And we had a handful of Pueblos come to us. We went to visit all of them, and I thought it was a good process. The last one was Zuni Pueblo. And I just want to say to you that I'm just not saying this, Commissioners and Mr. Chairman. I'm really impressed by this State Engineer because he's willing to travel. This is a long way out to Zuni Pueblo. It's a whole day. Another issue is went out to the Pueblo Laguna for its water resources tour. As you know, Laguna Pueblo and Acoma are in the Rio San Jose adjudication discussions, negotiations. We went out there for a tour to see the water resources, and generally, what I see from many of the cabinet secretaries and other high-level officials, when they go out to see a Pueblo, it's like they have a schedule of a meeting, and they say, well, I'm going to stay here for 2 hours, and then I got to leave. This State Engineer stayed the whole day, and I told him, Tom, if you have other meetings that you need to get to, just let me know, and we'll take care of the rest of the day. He stayed the rest of the day, and he and I didn't leave till 5:30 that evening, and this is in the fall. It was already dark when we left from Mesita, one of the little villages from the Pueblo. So when he goes out to meet the Pueblos, he stays and or gives them the amount of time that's needed in order to either understand what they're wanting to talk about, and listening. Listening is a big thing with the State Engineer. So the other part is Okewinge and Pueblos of Laguna, Acoma, Casa Beta, the Amet and Navajo settlements are all making progress. The big three, Casa Beta, Amet, and Navajo, are in several different phases of implementation. Okewinge and the Pueblos of Laguna are still meeting, still having the negotiations and discussions with related parties. Then the outreach is really huge here. So he's visited with the 23 tribes in the state of New Mexico, tribes, Pueblos, and nations. He met with 18 of them, or visited them, with the feasts that come up, and they broken bread with the governors. Famous Pueblo, I think it was in 17. The sitting governor then, no, in 16, went to Famous Pueblo afternoon, and the governor just lives right outside almost of San Isidro. But we went all the way to the Pueblo, we went to see the dances, and we had to come all the way back almost to San Isidro to the governor's house, but we sat down with him and had something to eat. And then we froze nearly to death up at Okeowinge. Christmas, the day after Christmas, they had the dances up there. They said, Myron, meet me up at Okeowinge. And this is the day after Christmas. So we went up there and there's the storm coming in, snowstorm. We barely made it back to Albuquerque. But this is the type of person that Sage Mir is. And as I said, 18 out of the 23 tribes have come to visit or have Netflix. So I think it's a good legacy with the engineer. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what I have to report here today. Thank you for allowing me to do this thing here.
Thank you for those kind words, and I'll make good on that promise to buy you lunch.
Oh, okay, all right. Even the McDonald's will work.
Well, I think it's just important to note that I do try to reach out to all constituents within the state, whether they're individual water rights owners or the districts, tribes, public or nations. It's very important to me that we get input from all sources. Moving on to some other activities that we're doing, we did get contract issued and started work on the beaver dam issue in Rio Castilla. And we are expecting to have a report completed sooner than the end of the year, but my anticipation is we'll have it just by the end of this calendar year. Look forward to some, I'll say some matrix of solutions that can address some of the issues that the preliminary reports may indicate that there's some real good participation from the game and fish department in how to help manage and control and direct where some of these beaver dams are being constructed, not to eliminate them, but to manage them. And so I look for some more positive results from that report. On the legal end, I want to start off with the Augustine's Penn Ranch protest and request. We had a hearing last December on a request for summary judgment that was entered into by the protesters to have summary judgment on the application. That hearing was held in December in Captain County. I think it's important that we recognize that we went to the county instead of having the county come to us. And in part that was as a result of legislation that was passed a couple of years ago that mandated that, but there are exceptions to that where we do have some flexibility still on where the hearings are. But it was important to me that we had the hearing for this particular case in the county where the application was made, because we had so many protesters. We wanted to make sure that all of the protesters, if they wanted to participate in the hearing process, that they would have access to that from a geographic standpoint. So the hearing was held, the merits of the case were defended by both the protestants and the application, and the protestants and the applicant. And recently, the hearing examiner made a recommendation to deny the application and the application, and I considered the hearing examiner's report, looked at the merits, looked at the evidence that was presented, and concurred with the hearing examiner to deny the application. And the application was found to be complete. And our district office was correct in issuing a notice of publication and indicating that the application was complete. The application was found to be speculative. And that is based on the fact that there were many uses for the appropriation of water out of the San Agustin Basin. And it was 54,000 acre feet to be used for municipal and industrial uses in several identified locations on the application. What was missing from that application was any contractual arrangement between the applicant and the user. There was no application, or there was no contract that was part of that application that would show that they had the ability to serve water to a willing, ready and willing applicant, or ready and willing user within the state. So it was considered to be a speculative application. I want to ask Greg if he wants to add any more to that. And if not, Greg, can you give us an update on the I want to say this guy did a fantastic job in Denver a few months ago. And we got some of the results from the hearing, the appeal to the Hammett settlement. And Greg was the one that presented at the Court of Appeals in Denver, did a fantastic job. But that'll be evident by the results and the decision from the court. Greg, you want to fill us in on that and on the other two?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman here. So State Attorney is referring to an appeal that was, the decision was just issued yesterday, the challenge to the Hammett Water Rights Settlement that was argued before the 10th Circuit. This is an appeal coming out of the Federal District Court in New Mexico. So it went up to the Federal 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver. The decision was issued yesterday. This was a challenge to the settlement by non-settlement parties. The settlement was the complex agreement we discussed before between the state of New Mexico, the four pueblos, non-Dutch blockade, the two things signing the council, the many cities in the MPT basin, and other parties. The appeal was on the challenge to the settlement agreement brought by non-settlement parties, domestic well owners for the most part in those bases, who claimed that the settlement was bad, that it violated state law, and was negatively affected their domestic well rights. The argument in the 10th Circuit focused on the nature of their claims of injury, and the decision of the 10th Circuit was that they had failed to satisfy the legal requirements for what is called standing to bring a suit when the court favored settlements, when there's a settlement and non-parties attempt to challenge the settlement, they have to show injury in fact or something called plain legal injury. And the 10th Circuit concluded that they had not made that showing. So they remanded the case back to the district court in New Mexico with instructions to deny the challenges to the settlement agreement on the grounds that the challenges lack standing. That'll go back to the district court. The district court will issue a revision to this order. That should bring an end to 51 years of the non-based lawsuit, particularly Hammett's water rights litigation. And we are well into the implementation of issues addressed in the settlement agreement.
Brian guiding up to his staff or in the basin every day, working with all the others and non-being so that's a very good result for you. I have 3 other things that I'd like to report on. It's interesting for that should be a slower time in the summer. It's certainly not been validated some of the last couple weeks. We've got several results of things going on worthy of note, worthy of reporting to you. Many of you may have heard that the state land commissioner a month or so ago filed a petition for the state engineer, challenging the state engineer's issuance of permits under statute 1712 allows the state engineer to issue permits for up to 1 year temporary use of up to 3 acre feet for construction projects or other projects to develop the state community resources and purposes. The land commissioner was challenging the practice in the southeast part of the state out of our Rockville office, how we have been issuing permits for decades. There was a hearing before the water judge in Santa Fe on that petition for writ on Monday. The judge, after the hearing, at the end of the hearing, ruled on the bench, cautioned the writ and mandated that it stop. So ruling in favor of the state. The basis of the ruling was that the land commissioner failed to show that there is a mandatory, non-discretionary duty on the part of the state engineer to do what the land commissioner does. That's on the ground for issues to the writ mandates. So that was an excellent result for the state engineer. Just this week also on Monday, the Supreme Court issued a series of orders relating to the appeal from the Navajo Nation in the Navajo County. I think I reported to you all in the previous meeting the status of those appeals. There actually were 4 cases in the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals these were all challenges to the Navajo Nation settlement. The Court of Appeals had upheld the settlement, although on grounds that I described to you previously that were problematic from the state of New Mexico's perspective. The reason that the Court of Appeals used called into question the ability of the state to manage the state waters under state law. And so we felt compelled to file what's called a petition for the certiorari asking the Supreme Court to take up the appeal. We weren't the only party. All the other parties also asked the Supreme Court to take up the appeal. And on Monday, the Supreme Court granted those motions, so the Supreme Court will be hearing appeals. And they consolidated all the appeals into one case, challenging the Navajo Nation in the USA. Also, the same day on Monday, the court separately issued an order. Separately, a group of 10 legislators, led by Paul Bandy, Representative Paul Bandy, had filed with the Supreme Court what they styled an emergency petition for writ of prohibitory mandamus against both the state engineer, the office of the state engineer, and the Ministry of Supreme asking the Supreme Court to issue a writ ordering the commission and the state engineer to cease any activities to implement the Navajo Nation and both the ISC, the state engineer, and the office of the engineer filed a joint response to that motion in opposition. And the court on Monday denied their legislators' motion for a writ, petition for a writ. The court did, however, grant, in the alternative, the legislators had asked if they weren't granted the writ, if they could be granted status to participate in any appeal before the Supreme Court had to meet with friends of the court. And the Supreme Court granted the legislators the opportunity to participate as a meeting. So they will, the outcome is there will be one case in the Supreme Court bringing together all the appeals challenges the Navajo Nation on that summit, and the 10 legislators will be able to participate in that. Lastly, another case that has been rattling along for a long time involving waters of the Gila River, the Lion State litigation came to a conclusion about 2 weeks ago. This is a case where Bill Turner sought to appropriate what he claimed were unappropriated, thousands of acre feet of unappropriated waters of the Gila River more than a decade ago. And the state engineer at the time denied the application, rejected the application, on the grounds that there was no unappropriated water available for irrigation. There was a lot of backward litigation more than a decade ago between the office, between the administrative proceeding and the city engineer and the judicial courts. That case ultimately came up to the Supreme Court in 2009, a very important decision, although we felt that it was the last decision issued by the Supreme Court, upholding the state engineer's rejection of that application, but remanding the case back to the district court for further proceedings. And we got back to the district court. The applicant cleared the case languished for many years. Ultimately, the district court dismissed the case without failure to prosecute. That went back and forth. We finally got up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court earlier this year denied the petition to take up the case. The Court of Appeals had upheld the district court. The Court of Appeals upheld the dismissal of the case. Turner petitioned the Supreme Court asking the court to look at the case. The court denied that petition. Turner filed for reconsideration of the Supreme Court's denial of the petition. The Supreme Court just denied that motion for reconsideration. That should bring to an end litigation that's maybe 2 decades old. So those 4 outcomes were pretty good outcomes in the space of the moment for the state, for the ISC, and for the office. Thank you.
And I just want to make sure it's not lost on folks that the amount of preparation for just one of these cases is extraordinary. It takes a tremendous amount of resources and direction. And I think under the leadership of Mr. Ridgely that our attorneys have done just a fantastic job, and the results kind of speak for themselves. One thing that I did not mention on the Augustine Plains Ranch application is my understanding that the decision for denial of summary judgment, the denial of the application in summary judgment was appealed, and it will, my understanding is it will be appealed in the district court in capital county. So we'll have more work to do on that application in the coming days. From a water rights standpoint, I really want to applaud Director Romero, and because we have kept the backlog down to a level below what the legislative measurement, performance measurement has required that the legislature established a threshold of 600 backlog of 600 permits at any one time within the water rights application process. And John has consistently kept them below 500. So successful that probably changed the measure. That's a risk you run. You perform to the level that they want you to perform to and exceed it, and they sometimes want more. But I think this has not come just by chance. I mean, it's through the direction and coordination and leadership that Mr. Romero has shown in the last couple of years in reducing the backlog and then keeping it below our threshold limit. One activity that we reported on in the last couple of meetings is the deep well in Sandoval County that was leaking back in, I think it was a couple of years ago. But they had drilled 2 wells in that aquifer, and one started experiencing some leaking to the top of the surface, and was discharging water that could eventually have made it to the Laguna land. I coordinated notifying the governor of Laguna over Thanksgiving that there was that potential, and I appreciate Myron's assistance on that. Fortunately, it never did reach their land, but it came awful close. They have completed all of the repairs on those two wells. Mr. Romero and I met with the owner, the trustee of those wells at this time, and they have spent, you remember the dollar value that they put into these wells? Is it $2 million? Yeah, I mean, this is not just the standard well. These wells are drilled 2,500 feet or deeper. And the water that they've encountered is highly mineralized. And they've gone in and put a bridge plug in these wells, which keeps any water from coming to the in the case of coming to the surface. So they've done a really good job putting bridge plugs in these wells that can be drilled out at some time in the future for use. There's a company that's interested in taking this water and extracting the minerals out of it and selling the minerals, and clean water would be the byproduct. Say hurt me. That's a good byproduct to have. So we look for more development in that in the next year or so. We are doing a safety and mapping project, and it is moving along. The staff met with the Safety Association and the Department of Finance and Administration to determine how to communicate with them on the additional funding sources that we need to have for that. The IT staff also met with the tribal liaison to coordinate with the tribes and the pueblos on identifying locations for some of these areas that are on our pueblos and tribal lands. So that is a tremendous resource that we will have when that mapping project is completed. Primarily because if an acequia is not on the, I don't know the right term, it's not eligible for FEMA funding if it's not on hazard mitigation. And so by doing the mapping that we're doing, it will place the acequias on the hazard mitigation map, which will make them eligible for FEMA funding if an event occurs that destroys or damages their works. Otherwise, they do not have the recourse from the federal government. So this is an incredibly important project to complete, and it will help in the administration of water in New Mexico. It's a resource that Director Romero can use in identifying metering locations for safety roads and just the overall planning. Speaking of metering, in this last month, the staff toured Zia Pueblo, and the irrigation works there to identify locations for surface water meters, so we can really get handle on the irrigation of water off of the Hemus reservoir, off the Hemus River. And one of my another major concern that I have in New Mexico is the Olala aquifer on the east side, and we have met with the with the city of Clovis and trying to develop a plan for them to navigate the declining water levels in that aquifer and what our options are. Looking at the appropriations and use of wells within that region to supply the regional water system while we build the pipeline from New Reservoir down to the Columbus area. So a lot of activities, many things going on in the state, very diverse. Mr. Chairman, with that, that concludes my review of the 2020.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair Brian. Now, we have the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I prepared pretty good report on the legal activities. Originally, just for the last point that report is Texas, New Mexico, and Colorado. Actually 141. Discovery is set right now, or anticipated to be set on September 1st of this year. And there is a hearing set before the special master on August 28th. At this hearing, special master will hear from the parties about the reports and other discovery or trial. It's possible the special master will more include these issues at the conclusion of the August 28th hearing. Dave Leader, Texas, New York, United States, has filed a motion to dismiss the next case. One other legal issue is related to some intrepid potash purchase applications. The hearing officer has recommended to the parties a mediation, and the parties are working on bringing to a mediator. In the process, so we're going to mediation on those. On the Colorado Basin, I just want to note that further in the agenda, there's a report from Governor's work on the current upper and middle basin drought contingency plans. I think that is the most significant activity within the Colorado Basin, and definitely with in regard to Hill and San Francisco Basin, on April USA's front, July 2nd through 13th of this year, Field Reclamation and the State Commission staff conducted 8 scope reviews for environmental compliance under NEPA related to the next unit of the Central Arizona project. 5 meetings were held in New Mexico and 3 meetings were held in Arizona. A total of 355 people attending those meetings, and we have received more than 1,000 comments for the joint use consideration, either in the form of email or on website. Also to note with regards to the AWSA, specifically the food fund. As of August 6th of this year, notice proceeding with issued portfolio of $7.3 million and $9.1 million for the non-Mexican project authorized by the Commission in the federal division of approximately 8 years ago. At this date, a total of approximately $1.6 million, 22% of proceeding, and 17% of the total awards have been extended to the grantees. Construction of 4 projects have been completed and staff achieved a work of $69 million grantees in respective funds. That's an important note, given that for the last 4 years, we've only been able to spend 17% of the total award. So that is just note for us to consider. Moving on to the Rio Grande Basin, it's a tough time to have a good sense of where we're gonna be in terms of our food status of debit or credit and the program compact. For 2018, Mexico has an approved debt of 700 feet. And we're kind of like in the middle of the season, and right now we're under delivered, something on a quarter of 20,000 feet. However, as the season goes on, we anticipate that number to come down quite a bit, because our index flow is going so low, and that we are going on, that our deliveries and anywhere making it to help you in order to make that direct call allocation. But that's regarding water operations, commission staff continues to work with the state engineers, District 6 office, to assist in their sharing operation in Shama. And I'll go into more detail on that later in the meeting. I do want to note that I signed a new employment agreement with the ISC Survey, statewide street agent, and basically standard operations, but just moving on to the papers. The interstate compacts, a couple things going on here. The staff has requested from the U.S. Supreme Court extension of the schedule in the 1988 amended decree regarding the final accounting of water year 2017. And that extension was from July 1st to September 10th, 2018. And the purpose of this extension was to allow for the final 2017 accounting to include federal English River Master's decision related to the storage of water for Texas and New Mexico in 2014 and 2015. Based on the schedule determined by the states, River Master, after a meeting in May, concluded that on this last July, New Mexico submitted to River Master a motion to reconcile and account for the water stored for Texas's benefit during the years of 2014 and 2015. On late July, Texas submitted its response to the New Mexico benefit, and August 10th, New Mexico submitted a response to Texas's benefit. I will note that there have been email communications since that time where River Master has asked the parties if they would agree to a preliminary review of his final accounting, which would include storage, and Mexico has agreed at this point Texas is silent, and that would be responded moving on, just real quickly with regards to water operations in the 2003 settlement. Commissioners aware that we are in settlement discussions with the PDA's Community with the Delaware Utility District and Crop Irrigation District and the Office of the State Engineer and the United States Bureau of Reclamation. Reclamation has brought in a facilitator who's been doing a pretty good job, and for that, I think that has really fostered an environment for the resolution. In additional information, I want to point out that there some model improvements commission staff is working with state engineer, hydrology staff, to staff to approve Pecos Basin, the lower Pecos Basin for the proposed background road. This is an effort Secretary on to have technical staff from both programs working together to identify where there are improvements for the 12 model ground model is developed 20 years ago, and the geology department is already already identified 12 areas of improvement. We anticipate this to be a collaborative effort, and it's not one that's going to happen overnight, but it's going to take probably a couple of years to complete. So I just want to point that out, that we probably consider doing that. That's what they're doing. Moving on to the Canadian, I want to point attention to the additional information section. And I'll just, you can read it, but I want to point out one of our staff, Greg Carlisle, who was instrumental in working with various entities in response to the fire. Roundhouse paper, and also been certain, I've been noting litigation or accommodation for his actions representing the commission in that help that community out and continue to help that community out. And I think we should be noted, and I think we'll continue to look as a way to appropriately recognize this effort. Moving on to the Castilla, here the water reservoir option. We don't have to be specific. I think it's important to note that the Castilla reservoirs began the season at around 13,000 acre feet as of August 3rd. We're at 4,000 acre feet. And so the storage there is taking a big hit as we're going to go through a little bit here. It's the same story around. Moving on, the safety program. State Board of Finance issued its tax funds in June that included funding for 14 safety projects out of this year's capital outlay bill, and staff is diligently working on the capital outlay agreements with those safety. With regards to drought, I'll note that the current forecast is for early fall, late fall, early winter. That there's a good chance of having an El Nino, which generally favors increased precipitation, but also sometime February, really not that. I want to bring your attention to this should be in the packet, it should be the next page. It's the drought monitoring work group state engineer report from July 31st. So this is a couple weeks old, but relatively current. If we go to the second slide, this is a bring together information that focuses on reservoir storage in a graphic view. The data comes from various sources and where that came from. And this information is on our website, and it's a monthly report that's provided to the drought monitoring work group by staff from the state engineer. Going to the second page, and I want to take just a second to go through the legend. So I want to pay attention to this slide right here. There's a lot of information in this slide that will hopefully fill on the rest of the presentation. Anybody get colorblind? Okay, good. So hopefully I get the colors right. If we look at the colors on the chart, well, first let's look on the left side. Everything's in thousands of storage, and it's in thousands of acre feet. And then if we look at just look at the chart itself, the blue line or the blue column is the current storage as I said at the end of last month.
The yellow is last year's storage at the same time. The red line, except for one or two reservoirs, is the average for the last 30 years on that given date. And the dotted green line is the storage from the previous month. So you have what was this reservoir doing last year, what is it doing right now, what's the average, and what did it do last month. And I'll go through the major reservoirs around the state, and I think you'll see pretty quickly where we are at. Starting with Navajo, currently we are roughly 250,000 feet below where we were last year, and probably on the order of 100,000 acre feet less than from the end of June to the end of July. And we are currently close to 400,000 below average. And now, of course, is a critical part of the San Juan system, and including now in the irrigation project, and we watch that very carefully, look at the building road communicate, and look to see some administration. Moving on to youth, youth has been pretty steady. Quickly. Moving on to Santa Rosa, I think we start seeing what we'll see with the previous month storage was about 90,000 acre feet. We're down to 60,000 acre feet, which is about average. And then at this time last year, we were at 40,000 acre feet. So what we're seeing is we're seeing the result of the last year before rains that came in September. And then what we're seeing also is movement of water out of Santa Rosa down to Brantley Dam. So this is where we're starting to see moving water, but by and large, we're doing okay at Santa Rosa as of today, and probably irrigation is considering future operations there that we do not have firm reports as to what we're going to do. Hold that water for the use more. Sumner is essentially a deregulating reservoir, so there's not a lot of change there. And then in Brantley, we see that there's an uptick in storage. That's the movement of water from Santa Rosa down to Brantley to use for irrigation. I will note that only 25,000 acre feet. We're less than that. We are below average, and we anticipate that's to drop quite a bit by the end of the irrigation season. Moving on to Heron. Heron's an indicator of the San Juan Channel project storage. As you can see, last year we were 150,000 acre feet off of average. This year we're close to 200 acre feet off of average, and we use some water out of Heron for 5,000 acre feet. I think this is very notable, and we should take attention to this. This is the imported water, and we're down in a good indicator of the amount of storage we have from imported water, and when we're starting to get down to the level of 100,000 acre feet, that is draining our San Juan Channel. Going on to the next one is Elvado. This is a good indicator of the native supply. Water storage in Elvado is from native. Average is typically this time of year 150,000 acre feet. That's what we're normally dealing with. This time last year, we were close to average. Last month, we were at 25,000 acre feet, and we are currently at around 10,000 acre feet storage. This tells you a big story of the channel. We'll talk about that later today, but I think this graphically shows the severity of the situation within the channel reservoirs. And this channel, I'll do very quickly here. Abiquiu, again, this is a reservoir that is a San Juan Channel reservoir.
Well below average. We're down about 50% from where we were last year, and there's been some releases since the previous month. To conclude, I really happy to can't laugh. Elephant Butte and Bio reservoirs are supply Rio Grande project. And as you can see, the average in Elephant Butte is a little bit over 1.2 million acre feet. Average of the Bio is a little over 100,000 acre feet. Obviously, way off of that last year. And as of last month, we were better off. Now we're looking at something on the order of just under 200,000 acre feet. I think it's a little less than that as of the last year. That is extraordinary because we are in Article 7 and it's going to take quite an event to get us back to 400,000 acre foot threshold. Get us out of Article 7 to be able to store water in our reservoirs upstream and close to So unfortunately, this gives paints a very stark picture, and that Mr. Chairman is very cool.
Thank you, Brian. Questions? All right. On the first page here, we have a notice of intent to approve this is moving.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Tony, would you, I think we guys could address that.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So, this is notice of intent to apply for this review is
Question.
there was some work that was done by the association on one of which that was financed by the ISC loan unit projects that are specifically in the work is being completed. This includes informed that since the work was done, he was not willing to move water after the condition. So he wants to see the negative. And he has said he knows the suit to go to ISC. I've spoken with the Administrative County. He has contacted Mr. Steve, I've also contacted the risk management division, which handles and we don't know where we're going to go with it. Is going to attorney and asking that we are investigating. I don't believe that there is any legal liability on something.
So this has to do with the roof and general ditch that apparently kept them from being able to use it.
I don't know the technical details, there was in my meeting, but my understanding is that since the work was done, water no longer gets to use because of the now some of it has to be probably with the work that was done, but some of it has to do with the fact that is put in a dry. So we are looking into this. We do what we can do how you can do the documentation so that the work at the version and the ISC staff and proceeding.
Thank you. Any other questions?
A couple of things I would like to take note of. I received a call last evening from our district office in Cimarron, in Farmington, and he's the manager for that district, and there appears to be some real problems with the reflows, and people are building structures that are past the debris downstream, but there's always that guy at the end of the stream. And I've asked Mr. Farmer, our district manager up there, to coordinate a meeting with myself, Director Longworth, Director Romero, and our general counsel to see if there is any issues that our agency needs to deal with, or if other agencies need to be involved. But I just want to say that in Director Longworth's report, he does talk about the monsoon rains and how they typically flow out of the result of the huge fire. So we will be looking at what kind of systems we can coordinate to help that situation up there. And I do want to just take a minute to recognize and thank our Pecos Bureau, our Pecos Bureau Chief Anna, for really pulling our hydrology section together to really look at the revisions to Pecos to the Carlsbad model. Before we got along with, there are some already significant issues that we can address that will improve our modeling capabilities in that area. And I just want to thank Director Longworth and Pecos Bureau for really pulling together with the Office of State Commission to identify and improve conditions. Thank you.
Well, moving on, the next item is the update on the Lord Claims Committee. The meeting was held this morning. Very quickly, the state law form is still out for public comments. Today we received about 20 comments. There was a request to extend the public comment deadline, that's going to extend by 15 days. So the new deadline is August 20th.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I want to update you on the work that is going on the Colorado River Basin with regard to drought contingency plans. As you probably know, the Colorado River Basin is experiencing an unprecedented drought. It's the worst drought we've been in thousands of years. And it's 19th year for this location. Because of this, Commissioner of Reclamation Brandon Bowman has directed the principals of the Southern Basin States to appoint representatives to a small coordinating committee to finish up drought contingency plan and let them ready to begin in 2019. So at a meeting in Santa Fe on June 19th, the principals designated the people that they wanted to be on this meeting. There are 10 representatives from the Colorado State and 3 representatives from the U.S. Department of Interior. The committee staff is to finalize all the documents necessary to effective and begin implementing the contingency plan for the upper and lower basins of the Colorado. And the coordinating committee the group has actually finalized 5 separate agreements and 1 piece of draft legislation. In addition to those documents, Arizona and California also have to work on separate inter-Arizona and inter-California agreements that will be attached to some of the bigger agreements that the community will do. Together, once these documents are signed or enacted in physical legislation, they will compose the draft contingency plan for the Colorado. We made good progress on these documents. The group has discussed each of the 5 agreements, and we have near final drafts of 3 of them. They are the Lower Basin Legal Agreement, and the attachment to it, which is the Lower Basin Operations Plan. So basically, the legal agreement will be signed by the parties of the Lower Basin and will commit them to implementing the operations plan, which is the second document. And the operations plan will be attached as an exhibit to the legal agreement as will the California and the Arizona documents. We haven't seen those yet. In addition, the group has generally reached consensus on the concepts to be embodied in two other documents. The Upper Basin Demand Management Agreement, which is between the Upper Basin states, through the CRC and the Secretary of the Agreement, and what they're calling the companion agreement. The companion agreement is an overarching document in which each basin will have some recourse if the other basin is doing something as part of its drought contingency plan that is a problem. So if the upper basin has a problem with the lower basin drought contingency plan, the mechanism to which we get to enforce that would be the companion agreement. So it's more difficult to do in craft because we need to know more precisely what is all the other agreements so we can find all the details. But we have general agreements on the concepts, and we are now beginning to go specific points out of the other agreements to tighten it. The other document that is almost complete is the draft response operations agreement for the operation. And this is one of the important pieces of the Upper Basin drought contingency plan, and it explains how when Lake Powell is approaching a certain elevation that is deemed critical in the Upper Basin, then the Upper Basin states, which are New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming, will get together and commence regular consultations and phone calls and will include the Bureau of Reclamation to modify operations of the Upper Basin reservoir to protect that critical operations method. So this document is also an the document that has been progressing that needs more work is the demand management document. This is an Upper Basin piece. It's a component of the Upper Basin draft contingency plan. It is an authorization for the Secretary of the Interior to make space available in Upper Basin reservoirs to store conserved water. So the idea is that whenever possible, the Upper Basin states will conserve some water that would otherwise be taken to beneficial use, and they will get it to Upper Basin reservoirs. And if we are at a point where the Upper Basin does not have enough water to deliver its 7.5 million acre feet to the Lower Basin, then we can release this conserved water to Lake Powell, and it would make its way to the Lower Basin to satisfy the Upper Basin's obligation under the Upper Colorado. This was originally a controversial idea, and we presented it to the Lower Basin. Discussed the idea and understood the benefits of this tax for the Lower Basin in the long run. And so they are now fully supportive of the idea. We've made great progress on the agreement, and we are going to add 7 contributions. When all of the agreements are ready, the last document that this group needs to draft is legislation to introduce in Congress, and the plan is already supported by the Russian delegation for all 7 states. So it's 14 senators and a large number of representatives to allow the Secretary of the Interior to enter into all these agreements and implement the draft contingency plans for the FDR. So this is the last agreement. The Commissioner of Reclamation, Brenda Berlin, gave us a deadline of Labor Day to be done with all the documents. And then at that point, the documents will begin the ratification process in each individual state. water aquifer in each state, which means I will be back in November or, I'm sorry, September or October with the documents and I can just draft the people. But I wanted to do an update and let you know where we are. And with that, I was saying.
Thank you very much for your question. Who is the already elected?
I am.
Good report. Thank you. A couple of questions I'm going to ask just to bring some clarification on some of the things that are going on. First off, the conserved water. What do you view as the highest hurdle there from a county standpoint? I know the agreements are one thing, but the actual technical approach on determining how much water is conserved is really a big issue. And can you help the commission with a little explanation on that?
Absolutely. So this is a complicated process for the reason that we say in the So what we are doing right now, when the committee started exploring this idea and floated it to principles, we said, look, we don't even know if this is feasible in reality. But there are so many legal and technical hurdles, mostly legal to begin with. We are not even going to try to see if this is really feasible until and unless we know that if we can do this, we have a place to store the water. So what we are tackling right now is this: give us a place to store the water. And what our agreement said is, if we have that storage available, then we will tackle all these other issues. The feasibilities. Basically, if we know storage is there, we will do a feasibility study, look at all the legal hurdles, and look at all the technical hurdles. How do we verify that people are using water that would otherwise have been, or conserving water that would otherwise have been beneficial? We call it boots on the ground. How do you measure that? How do you figure out how it gets to the reservoir? How do you calculate the amount of evaporation from that water in the reservoir? How do we then shepherd that water from that reservoir to the town? When do we use it? These are all very complicated. We are not addressing this right now. But we are committing that if we have that storage space and we are able to put together what we call a demand management program, then we will address all these issues. And I think the way this is going to occur is that we will set up a pilot program where we will try this on tributaries and irrigator or municipalities who are willing to participate and tackle all these issues on the ground and see what we get. And then based on the result, and the other thing that I should mention is that the program we're looking at right now goes through the end of 2025. And that is because the current interim guidelines for the operations of Lake Powell and Lake Mead expire at the end of 2025. So what we're committing to is between now and the end of the guidelines, we're going to try to set up this program, try to run it on a pilot basis, see how that goes. And then starting in 2020, when we start renegotiating the guidelines, we will use whatever information we learned from this program to set up a more long-term demand management program that will be then incorporated in the new guidelines that will be in place starting in 2020. I hope that was
I understood everything. It was very good. I think it should be noted that these issues are very complex, and then you add the complexities in the individual states in how we calculate and determine conserved water as opposed to Utah or Colorado or Wyoming, maybe much different. And so trying to get all of those pieces put together is a monumental task. Yeah, I just wanted to bring some of those points out, but our staff that's working on this is just incredibly talented for one, and I appreciate the legal and technical expertise that's brought to the table. Dominic, do you see any problems with New Mexico meeting the deadline in the commissioner of Florida?
I do, so I think we will be absolutely fine. Literally, we're meeting with person and talking to everybody, and we're progressing fast, so.
Any other questions? No, thank you, Madam. Moving on to the next item, for consideration of an amendment JPA with municipal capital school.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, before I get started, I would like to recognize Peter Michi Jr., Anthony Gutierrez, and Lorraine Hollingsworth, Ms. Turner, and the executive director for the municipal capital. Who have helped work with staff on this document. And my plan is to project the red line on the wall so you can see. Sorry, this is going to take a minute. I'm afraid I have some technical difficulties, so I believe you have the right out of your account. Would you like to
Proceed.
Sorry about that. So if you will look at the red line here, the edits in red are what we are talking about, and there is one more paragraph that is highlighted on page 6, which is also an edit. Even though it's not.
Dominic, can you just summarize it?
Yes, absolutely. So the intent of those edits is to amend the JP to allow the municipal cap entity to allocate some money to non-municipal unit projects after December 31st, 2019. As you know, December 31st, 2019 is the date on which the record of decision for the NEPA process for the New Mexico unit is supposed to be issued by the Secretary of the Interior. So after that date, according to this amendment, the New Mexico cap entity or the ISC as the first custodian for the entity would then be able to disperse money to non-unit projects to benefit the region. That's the summary of the edit.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming that probably the primary question is why the municipal cap entity will try to amend the joint powers agreement as it is, and I think that it's probably best described as we've certainly been during the legislative session in the past several years. The New Mexico unit has been under attack, being taken away and utilized in some manner that would be the decision of the legislature. And our board is concerned that if that was to actually happen, whether it's legal or not, I think is a question, but that would eliminate the input from the Mexican Catholic and potentially from the Interstate Stream Commission. And so, although the money was filtered through the Interstate Stream Commission by law, potentially we removed the Mr. Patrick from any decisions being made on potential projects that would be funded by the next Meeting. So, in order to satisfy some of the concerns that our project is now potentially being paid for with the construction dollars from the Lower Colorado Unit Fund monies available, that the Mexico Unit Fund sits there and is not currently being used to its full potential. And so while we do recognize that there are startup costs and there are costs associated with preliminary operations of the Mexico unit, and potential costs that we need towards further planning and even design of the unit itself, there would potentially be monies available for other projects. And so in discussion with the board, they felt that an amendment to the joint powers agreement, which now only utilizes the New Mexico unit for the New Mexico unit and or a potential project with infrastructure complete for Macaran. This would potentially open the door for other water utilization alternatives, recognizing that our board consists of region-wide elected officials and public entities. We want to make sure that they have some authority in being able to move projects forward. We don't want to, although unsatisfied, they haven't been successful. There is still continue to talk of taking that next unit and using it in a different manner. So that's primarily the reason that the board decided to take this action.
And if I may add one thing, Mr. Chairman, if you look at the language of page 6, it's very clear that the parties, which would be the capital, including the ISC, will formulate specific management policies for the evaluation, prioritization, and implementation of the project. The applications for project funding will not be accepted prior to the issuance of the record of decision by the secretary. That's specific.
I think amending the JPA is a good thing for non-maintenance projects. However, my concern and reservation is that the CapEx team is significantly lagging behind the newer projects, and potentially at risk of not meeting deadlines and moving that project forward, or we've invested tens of millions of dollars in time into that. So that being my concern, I really suggest we postpone this item and allow staff to meet with Mr. Gutierrez and officers of the board to discuss that issue before we consider non-unit authority the project. Which we think
Regarding I guess, the gap key, since construction of other water utilization alternatives, what does that mean? Does that mean use of water or conservation? And what is a possible range of those alternatives?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners mentioned, this is the language of the AWS that we and so the AWS made the difference between the version structure that we use the Mexican unit and then other water utilization alternatives. The Act does not specify, and so if this could be anything, but the idea is that the entity and the ISC will put together some policy, or some sort of method by which to gauge applications that can include the
I think that what the literally specifically saying it's a use or contribution that are or is that what you give it up or just something with it is for specific.
Any other questions? Yes.
Mr. Chair, explain to me the NEPA process on this, and which projects need to have the NEPA documentation, and which projects would not require that.
And in Mexico, would have to go through the NEPA process. Also, depending on what type of projects they are, whether they're conversion projects or not, potentially would have to go through the permitting process, which would also require some sort of environmental review process. But as of right now, the only one that's going to actually go through the NEPA process is the next review.
What requires NEPA is a federal nexus. So, the New Mexico unit is a subset of the Central Urban Project, which is a reclamation project. That's the federal nexus that requires NEPA. What we call the non-unit projects, which are all the other projects that the commission funded, have no federal nexus because the money ceases to be federal money once we go into the ISC. So there's no federal nexus on the funding. Now, if any projects that are non-unit projects are on federal land, they might have a federal nexus and they might require some environmental review. But for the moment, the only project that requires it is the unit.
Any questions? Yes. When the record of decision is provided, has there been at that point any construction done on the next building?
Yes, sir.
So there wouldn't be any real knowledge or understanding about how much of this balance that they're concerned with the legislature yesterday. There's no knowledge about how much of that might be needed to supplement the amount of construction that would be required to complete the New Mexico unit.
Basically, that's correct. There will be a price tag for the unit, which is going to be evaluated in fact. And so in the record of decision, there will be a price tag. But as we all know, construction projects tend to overlap from the price tag. And there would be no knowledge of what overlap might be at the time of the record of decision.
I guess I have a real concern about any of these funds being utilized for these other projects before the New Mexico unit is in fact put into place. If there's something left over, then I think that sort of funding, I think that funding certainly should be considered to be available. But prior to that, and it sounds to me like the way that this is worded, basically as soon as the record of decision is made, then there is a possibility that some of these funds could end up being extended for, quote, other projects. And I have a real concern about that, and I think that when we initially considered the other projects, the 15 or 16 that are being worked on today, that was a concern of the commission at that time, saying, look, it may take more than the construction funds which would be available in order to complete this project. So let's not spend it now. Let's wait until the project is put together. So I guess I have a real concern with that. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address Vice Chairman Thorpe's concern. Mr. Cassidy has the same concern. It doesn't necessarily Opening up the JPA, potentially utilizing it. Number one, we have that 2019 deadline in the document itself. We're also taking a look at is during the NEPA process, you do have alternatives that continually be brought for analysis. There's currently an alternative now, potentially that's been recommended related to the GIC and the project. So there's a lot of things that potentially may evolve during the NEPA process as far as design. But the design will also evolve during that time period, just prior to final design. We should have a pretty good idea of what the actual cost of the mixed unit will be. We have preliminary costs right now. Those preliminary costs also have a 30% contingency added to them, so that we can have that cushion and buffer right now. So we certainly are in agreement with your concerns. We're in agreement with concerns of Chairman Sanchez that we do have some priority things that have to be taken care of. But I also received from our engineers this morning some timelines for the information that's lacking in that data gap for the NEPA process, and we'll certainly be speaking with Director Longworth about those, and some of those will be available as soon as Monday. So I think that we're addressing those as quickly as possible, and we're hoping to get back on track as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think given some of these concerns and significant outstanding issues, Mr. Terrace has represented that he is eligible and they're not concerned. I entertain a motion that we postpone this item until the September meeting to allow the captain's team and our staff to get together and potentially resolve these issues at least from the time of the meeting. Is there a motion? Yes.
I would like to make a motion to table this issue until the captain and staff and have no time to discuss. I think that there are some questions that are unresolved as to what is the impact of this action have on completion of the NEPA and being the record decision. How does that, in my mind, there's some confusion as to where the lot is applicable, where it's not, and then where's the time being spent. If this JPA is approved in its form, does it take time away from that should be dedicated to the legal process to look at these non-unit problems? So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I would like to make a motion that we table action on this agenda item until September.
For a second. Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The record will reflect that. Moving on, we have a report of our agency audit, and then Mr. Martinez, with car rates in England.
Marcus and Commissioners, look, I'd like to take the time to introduce the new agency CFO, Monica Maestas. She just started a couple months ago with the agency, and also Dan.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, Drainey, and members of the commission. It's my pleasure to serve you. I've been with the agency since June 4th.
So a little bit about me, I have a degree in finance from New Mexico State University, go Aggies. I have been in state government for about 10 years. My last recent position is as the Deputy Director for Finance. And, you know, hope to go into this new audit.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Engineer, Commissioners, good morning. June 30, 2017. I want to make sure that's pretty clear up front. You know, we're already underway with the 2018 audit, but we were expected to come present on the June 30, 2017 audit. So that was for the period from July 1, 2016 to June 30, 2017. This is the exact same presentation that we presented back in October. We gave the state engineer, the previous CFO, and Jeff Trim the 1 hour version of this. I'm going to give you all the 10-minute quick note version of this. So please feel free and stop me at any point if you have any specific questions. My name is Daniel Martinez. As I said, I'm the partner on the engagement with a colleague in Europe. If you look at your last year's financial statements, they're actually reported under RPC. Our firm merged with colleagues in England in October, so that's why you may see the difference in the name of who issued the audit report versus who issued today, but it's the same firm, same team, all of that same time. So we'll go ahead and get going on this. You all have the handout in front of you. This is kind of what we walked through. Of course, the timeline is very similar to what we're doing this year. We started the planning in June, July. We performed for over the course of a couple of weeks. Last year was the first year that we were engaged as your auditor, so it took a little bit more time to gain an understanding of how the engineer's office and the institution work, and how all that was set up. And we delivered the financial statements had the exit about a week before the November 1st statutory deadline. This year, we're pretty far ahead of schedule. We're going to be conducting our field work meetings on September 10th, and we should have everything done by the middle of October. No issues with the statutory deadline. Of course, we're engaged to provide an opinion on your financial statements. So in these financial statements are 95 pages. The part that's ours is about a 2-3 page audit report. And what we're saying there is that your financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with the accounting principles and acceptance in the United States, and that there are no areas where an opinion cannot be rendered. So all these balances, all these notes in your financial statements, we were able to gain what's called sufficient appropriate audit evidence in order to give an opinion on the financials. And we were able to call it unmodified opinion, or it's the best opinion available. In addition, we have another report in this financial statement. Because we provide these audits in accordance with the New Mexico State audit rule, they asked us to report just called the bearish or yellow book report on your internal controls over financial reporting and on compliance and organic. So that's the report where you would find the findings. That's where if something came up and the state auditor has a lower threshold than what the threshold is nationally for what we need to report in the financial statements. And as a reporter back in October, we had no findings that were reported. So we had no issues with the control efficiency or no issues with compliance with the New Mexico State audit rule that were required to be reported in the financial statements. And that is very significant. I'd say over the 40 plus entities that we perform audits for the state auditor, I'd say maybe 10 or 15%. We see that information. So that's good news. Always great to hear. Our responsibility, as I told you, was to express the opinion as well as give reasonable but not absolute assurance. We aren't going to be auditing every single number in there, but we are paying attention to things based off of if they're qualitatively material, would they matter to readers, or quantitatively, are they big enough that if this number was different, we would be concerned. So that's kind of what we focus on. We go through and do our risk assessment and build up procedures based off of that. We're also responsible for, as I told you, to consider those controls that you have in your organization. And as I told to the engineer and to Monica, if you all have questions about how other agencies do things or how other engineers or engineers or anything like that do operate and require best practices, please reach out to us and use us as a resource, not through the course of the audit, but just as that added service. As we work with Caribbean, we're the 19th largest firm in the country, so we have offices from Florida all the way here, 13, 14 states, so we can get that expertise for you all in whatever avenue that you're looking at, if you would need that. And of course, we're required to communicate significant matters related to the financial audit, which is what we did in October and what we're doing again today. The next page is the financial statement highlights. And again, this is looking back 14 months in the past, so I won't dwell on this too much, but I want to give you a little overview for what you would see in the June 30, 2017 financial statement. Your total assets for the agency increased by about $6 million, from $224 million to $230 million. Really, that was a little bit of an increase in your investment based off of investment income. Your capital assets, of course, are your largest asset of about $100 million. And your other large asset is your government receivables. Your total liabilities remain almost exactly the same from year to year. Your largest liability, of course, is the $60 million at June 30, 2017 for the inland waterway. So, the next statement that we have is the statement of activities, and what that does show the revenue and expense for the year. So what occurred as far as revenue, expense, support, special items from July 1, 2016 to June 30, 2017. And as you can see, total revenues and support decreased by about $23 million. You might be shocked, okay, what the heck is that? About $4 million of that was related to the severance tax bond proceeds decrease from fiscal year 2016 to fiscal year 2017. About another $1 million in decrease was related to your general fund appropriation. So about $5 million of that was actual revenue decrease. The additional large portion of that is related to the Indian water rights settlement and the adjustments that are made from year to year. So it's not necessarily revenue, but there are adjustments to settlements that are made year to year based off of ongoing negotiations, based off of the determinations of what the state's cost share is. And it just so happened that 2 years ago there was a large adjustment to that, last year there was not. So that's where that number comes from. Expenses decreased pretty significantly by $13 million, and a large part of that was related to a decrease in their contractual space. The second part of this financial statement highlights, what we like to do when we present our report is, you're getting this 95-page document, and when you're telling you, here's 3 pages, everything looks good, you're fine. But we wanted to share with you all a little bit about what we did. So what we do is highlight a couple of areas that we took a little bit more time in fiscal year 2017. Now, this is not to say that there are issues with them. This is not to say that these are risks or elevated concerns. This is where we spend the time with the audit due to the first one was the Arizona water settlement. And sometimes whenever you switch auditors, there are questions about classification of certain things. And this goes into a little bit of accounting lingo and jargon, but we identified some issues with regards to the reporting of the Arizona water settlement and the type of classification that was shown on the balance sheet, as well as where the imputed interest is being recorded on the receivable. So what we're just saying here is there's a little bit of time for us to figure out how to classify the Arizona water settlement. We sat down with the CFO with Jeff, and we talked through it, and we came to this determination. It didn't change anything with regards to the value of it, just where it was located in accordance with the governmental auditing standards and gathering we had to move around. The second was your capital asset roll forward. I said earlier, your entity has about $100 million in capital assets. Well, the tracking mechanism for that is an Excel spreadsheet. And so it took a little bit of time just to make sure that we verify and clarify that everything in that Excel spreadsheet was complete, that the depreciation expense from year to year is being calculated correctly. All those types of tests related to your capital asset roll forward. And We know that this was Jeff's first year with that capital asset workbook, and we thought he did a good job, maintaining it, and his first day of his responsibility. He is also very helpful answering questions. One of the recommendations that we make at the end is, for the amount of assets under the control, you could consider having some type of capital asset software to make it a little bit more easier to track than what you all have now. Not to say that we found anything wrong with the numbers you all have now, but just a point of emphasis, I guess, or something that you could think about. Next, let's see, pages 3 through 7 are required communication with audience members. And this is really, in the presentation in October, that takes up a bulk of our time. And I won't go through those in detail now. But how it's laid out is on the left is what our responsibility is to report to you. On the right is how it relates to the agency. When you're going through there, you'll just see, we talked about what your responsibility is, we talked about the timing of the audit. We said you look at your significant accounting policies and they make sense related to the type of agency that you all have. There are no significant difficulties, no disagreement with management. Nothing out of the area that's broad or legal act that we need to present to you all. We also require to communicate any adjustments to you all. So from the final trial balance that we received from the agency, we only had 2 adjusting journal entries that we proposed, and both of those were related to that Arizona water settlement. So for the amount of transactions that you all go through during the year, and for the amount of testing that you did, having 2 entries related to something that is pretty highly technical is good news. As far as whenever you all closed the books and what you all gave to us to audit, it felt very good. The majority of the balances, as you can see by the fact that there were also no findings in the report. Moving on to page 8, there are certain areas of management, judgment, and accounting estimates. Not every single balance in this financial statement you can tie down to an invoice, tie down to an expense, tie down to a bank statement or check in the mail. There are certain things that are estimates, and we were required to report what those are. Just so you all aware of what are what's called soft numbers in this financial. And so for your financial statement, of course, the depreciation of your capital assets is based off of what lives that the engineer determined the assets have. In addition, your contingent liabilities is the Indian water rights settlement. Of course, there's definitely some valuation aspect related to that. Your investments are valued at fair value, and the current portion of your free compensated assets. So the current portion of what you pay out to people, whenever they leave, as far as the compensated assets down. In addition, we statements related to those and related to all other note disclosures, we believe that they were clear and consistent. And everything that we believe to be of particular sensitivity to the user's financial information were presented in those notes. And we work collaboratively with the agency to build those notes, because as we said, those are your financial statements. Going through this year, we've expressed, we put together the template. If you saw anything in last year's financial statements that related to any of your audit areas, that you did need additional information, we're more than happy to work with the agency to strengthen any of those notes that you would like to present. The only thing that we're required to do is to make sure that the intent in there is accurate and that we can provide an opinion on what is presented in there. So if you're saying something related to one of your settlements, we would need to see documents that, okay, this is where you get, where you gather the information from this water report in the financial. Page 9, normally this is where we lay out, the findings and have a discussion about, this is the issues that we found, these are the deficiencies. Happy to report, as I said, there's none for the fiscal year 2017 audit. And lastly, we like to try to provide some value-added suggestions from what we're seeing. Again, these are not control efficiencies. These are not this area necessarily as far as any material mistake. It's your financial that we're saying. Here's things you may want to think about. The biggest thing we thought of is capital asset inventory procedures and tracking. Could be a little bit more strength in that area. When we go to IC training school, in regards to testing. And you don't really think about an Excel spreadsheet as an IT system, but it is making it performing calculations. And there's a statistic out there that if you have an Excel spreadsheet over 250 lines, there's an over 90% chance that will be wrong with that spreadsheet, which is pretty shocking, pretty interesting stat because you go in there and still be not carrying forward, and all of a sudden you're missing a large dollar amount of expense, and you don't have it. So one thing to consider. In addition, we encourage agency employees to attend, all the sheriff training courses, or we have the CFO training. That's next week, right? Yeah, so whether it's just sheriff training, CFO training next week. The DFA is putting on Saturdays, we just encourage to also continue to attend that, just like training, so you'll find where they can. So we are available to 68 year round. Please don't hesitate to reach out. The last thing that I failed to point out in the financial highlights for 2017 that might be of interest to you all is there was a transfer out from the irrigation fund in 2017 to general fund to assist in supporting operations. I'm sure you all are aware of that. So that was something a little bit more unique that was presented in the fiscal year 2017 financial statement. But preliminary discussion as far as if that was going to be returned in 18, I'm not sure if that's been determined yet. Still working through the recording of the books and budgets for 2019. But that was one additional item we considered didn't come out from the financial statement. But all in all, no findings. The valuations of those settlements is obviously something we spent time on. This year, for this regard, there's no big new governmental accounting standards that are going to be coming up. There's one that is effective next year related to your agency funds that we talked about considering earlier this year. If the agency was interested, but nothing huge on the horizon that we need to consider as far as accounting standards. With that, to be respectful of your time, I'll go ahead and open
Mr. Martinez, any questions? I just have one comment. I think it's great that, the audit turned out the way it did. I noticed in the full audit we have in our book, the exit conference, there was no representation directly from the ISC in the presentation. And I wonder if that's something that might be helpful because obviously the ISC is a significant part of the audit report. And I just raised that as thank you. Commissioner, the next item on the agenda is something that is current for X community on the website. So I'm going to excuse myself as chair and for the discussion and turn it over to the vice chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll go to item number 6 now, presentation by the Rio Grande Engineer Advisor and discuss commission approval for some action. Director John Oliver, presentation.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, here today as Rio Grande Compact Engineer Advisor. Staff, but I'm reporting from the compact perspective. And we're going to be talking about the administration of alternative administration this year, 2018, on the Rio trauma and some of the challenges that we've had this year and how we see things potentially moving forward a little bit. Ask for, I think we'll recommend the proposed action. Before I continue, I'd like to recognize a few people in the audience. Brian Gallegos, who is District 6 manager, who is leading the alternative administration in the field. I want to thank Brian for all the work and staff that they've been doing this year. extraordinary year. China had all the food and so thank you, Brian, and of course, ISC staff, Paige Pegram, and honors. They've been Chris Stageman, not be here, he actually took a vacation. My man, he's on LLS, he's on vacation at this point in time, but in all seriousness, without staff support, we would not be able to be in compliance with the compact as thorough as we are. Mike Hammond, who is the district engineer for Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. We have the chief operations, John Stomp, from the Albuquerque County Water Utility Authority, and we have Jeff Baylor, who is the area manager for the United States Bureau of Reclamation. So if there are any questions during my presentation, you should have appropriate representation for the various entities that I will be speaking about. With that introduction, I will get to it. As we all are aware, hydrology 2018, I can't think of any adjectives but abysmal. The snowpack this year, the Rio Chama, was on the order of this peak at something around 50%. But in all reality, there really was not much of any snow. We did not see much of any peak flow, and we had an extraordinarily, and with that, we had an extraordinarily dry trade. The May 1st NRCS soon out runoff forecast, which was from March through July, had an inflow to El Vado, which I indicated earlier, was an indication of the native flow at 25% of average. Obviously, this is significantly low, and I think as I've spoken in previous commission meetings, that forecast really was off the charts. When you go down the system of San Marcial, had a negative inflow, which shows that the models in and of themselves do not handle the levels of which snowpack, the low levels of which the snowpack was for this time. On Rio Chama, the La Fuente gauge is a gauge that is used to administer the lower safeties, which are Rio, RCA, Rio Chama Safety Association, which is an organization that speaks for a number of smaller, speaks for safeties in that lower reach, below attitude. And the La Fuente gauge is used to determine the amount of water available for diversion by what I just referred to the RCAA, which is a number of these different, which is an organization that represents the smaller, which represents the safest down there. There's a number of diversions that go along with that. Generally speaking, at La Fuente, 100 CFS is sufficient native flow to satisfy the water rights for RCAA. However, as of at least today, since June 7, it's been less than 50 CFS, and has been more or less than 30 CFS since June 20th, and except for approximately 5 days since June 26th, it's been less than 20 CFS. So we're talking less than a fifth of what is the normal flow necessary to meet the pre-rights for the Rio Chama Safety Association and their members. The Rio Chama, the RCAA has some, a couple other notables. The Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District started their reservoir releases at the end of April, approximately April 29th. Typical operations, reservoir releases begin mid to late June. So we're talking about 4 to 6 to 8 weeks earlier than normal. That means Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, if we're going to meet their farmers' needs, start pulling water significantly dry operation. Additionally, and I find this statistic to be really kind of just an eye opener, the native flow at the Rio Grande Elderly Gauge, which is our index gauge under the Rio Grande Compact, as of earlier this week was total flow for the year approximately 266,000 acre feet, with 37% of average. Put this into perspective, staff looked at what the Mississippi is flowing, and it's large drought, and we are below normal. That's approximately 8 to 9 hours of flow on Mississippi. This is extraordinary. RCAA in their decree has the oldest priority date. It's not kind of memorial priority dates in the state of New Mexico. The very senior pitches have been here a long time. Earliest priority is 1600. However, they have a direct native flow right only. In other words, they do not have a storage right. They can only take water in priority as it flows by. And this is where the flow statistics that I previously mentioned come into play. Very much just extraordinary. The reservoir system on the Chama consists of 3 reservoirs, principally Abiquiu going upstream, Abiquiu, El Dorado, and Heron. Heron is strictly San Juan Chama flow. Dorado is strictly native flow, and Abiquiu, which is the most downstream reservoir, is strictly San Juan Chama. Well, in other words, from the Colorado River system into the Rio Grande system. You consider that imported water. This water must be kept separate from native flow and accounting procedures. It must not be heated upstream of the Liberty Index gauge without strict accounting and corrections to the Rio Grande Compact yearly accounting. Otherwise, New Mexico will be used for double dipping. And that is probably the core of what our involvement is from a compact perspective, and drives a lot of the necessity of the work that Brian's group does to maintain the various restrictions that are in a little bit. In past years, there has been called alternative administration of the Rio Chama. And this year is another iteration of alternative administration. There have been various style alternative administrations given the hydrologic conditions at the time, whether there's a significant native flow available, whether there is whether RCA has money to lease water, whether the native, particularly the San Juan Chama water, to pay back any potential impacts that they may have to imported water, San Juan Chama water, in their operations. Unfortunately, this year, the RCA did not have the money and was unable to lease any water from typically MRGCD to be able to pay back their impacts to withdrawing San Juan Chama water from the Rio Chama. Moving on to another component of this complex, let's say, situation. There's Rio Grande Compact relinquishment credits available to the Commission. So they're allocated by the Rio Grande Compact Commissioner, Secretary Blaine, over the years, and in the most recent round of allocations, there's been 2 specific pools that should be noted. One, 6,000 acre feet has been allocated to this commission for the purposes of supporting the biological opinion. And then there's another 7,000 acre feet of allocation for three purposes. One, to help establish the coordination with the Albuquerque County Water Utility Authority and the Corps of Engineers, a native pool at Abiquiu, and this is a long-term view to be able to help manage through situations like this. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. There's a lot of NEPA, EIS, and just straight permitting issues that would require for native water to be stored in Abiquiu. That said, most water managers agree, if not all, that this kind of future thinking is important for the management of the Rio Grande and will assist in Rio Grande compact operations, in species operations, and but also potential operations involving offsetting interception of water from RCAA and potential offset. This past March, this commission approved to execute the direct staff to execute the necessary procedures to store 1,150 acre feet of New Mexico's relinquishment credit. That is out of the 7,000 acre feet of allocation. Again, 6,000 acre feet, not to be confused, it is for our biological opinion and counted separately and essentially it's a lot of those uses. Of that 1,150 acre feet, 750 acre feet were to be stored for the benefit of OSC's for the alternative administration of Rio Grande. However, to date, none of us really anticipate this changing. There has not been any native flow available to be stored this year, and likely not for the rest of the year. And just as a reminder, a relinquishment credit is when the state of New Mexico has credit water in OSU, and the state of Texas agrees to relinquish water. In other words, in exchange, they'll take that credit water, and then New Mexico has the opportunity to then have credit to be able to store under Article 7 conditions, which are conditions when elephant use is below 400,000 acre feet. As we discussed earlier, we're seeing elephant use in quite the low state, and basically wild before we get out of Article 7 conditions. So relinquishment credits are very important to the state of New Mexico because this does allow us to store some water in years when otherwise we could not store water under Article 7. The 2018 Rio Grande operations or alternative administration with a bit of overview of that. In and around early, as I mentioned earlier, June of this year, the state engineer staff began curtailing the RCA member ditches since the native flow was no longer sufficient to meet the RCA's agreed level. There has been a curtailment on RCAA since the beginning of June. That curtailment essentially is a rotation between the ditches, where ditches are on some days and off other days, rather than a continuous diversion or whatever. In discussions with the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, the district indicated they would consider that impacts to their native and San Juan Channel water from operations of RCAA, should they impact their operations, they would consider as a payback an assignment of relinquishment credit to our RCD for storage in Delgado under the conditions that are required under relinquishment credits discussed. As the summer has unfolded, the conditions have remained and have become extreme.
mentioned earlier, we have, in June, I think we started dropping below 20 CFS at the end of June. That's an extraordinary situation. I won't say it's unprecedented, but nonetheless, there are a number of factors that are unique to this year's administration. One of the factors, as I mentioned earlier, is that our CAA was not able to secure any lease water to be able to have a wet water offset. With low flows, the way the RCAA system is set up, a number of those ditches require push water in order to be able to get water for Parciantes. And in doing that, they have to convert more than the 20 CFS at La Fuente, which is what is in their order. The 750 acre feet that previously spoke of, because of these extreme conditions, was rapidly absorbed in these operations of our CAA, and since then they have exceeded 750 acre feet of diversion of San Juan channel water, and we continue to go through the accounting. I believe we're at something in the water somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 acre feet of impact to Rio Grande Conservancy District's supply. That brings me to why I am making this presentation and giving you this background. We are approaching a situation where the Rio Grande Conservancy District will exhaust its native and San Juan channel supply within the next 10 to 14 days. In other words, Middle Rio Grande will only be operating off of one of the river, so any rainstorms that come through and other kinds of turn flows, those are the only flows that will be available to the Conservancy District members. After that point, the following water will be released. Bypassing native flows, and that would be part of the water that's available to RCA to work, as administered by state engineer staff. But the bulk of the water that's going to be released is San Juan channel water. And San Juan channel water is broken down into a number of parts. The first part in the San Juan channel water is one reserve amount is water that's been stored by the Albuquerque County Water Utility Authority over the past very how far back it's really, but long time. They wouldn't have this water if it had not been proven to be managed in this water. They will be releasing water for their surface water drinking water tank. This has been a long time project that's been under operation over the last 10 years. It allows the authority to rest its groundwater wells and conjunctively manage their drinking water system. And we've seen quite a response from the groundwater system because of the ability to divert surface water. And that kind of management is going to be absolutely essential as we move forward into the future for security of drinking water for ABCWA. The second amount of water that ABCWA will be releasing is supplemental water for river flows, and this is in cooperation with the United States Bureau of Reclamation. I want to just make a point at this juncture that the information I'm providing you right now is very dynamic. It can change from day to day, and so I'm giving you somewhat of a generality of what's going on, but relatively specific. I think that I believe this is a proper representation, but when I talk about this one particular flow, the rains, there's all sorts of different hydrology conditions that come out that may impact whether or not this water is released or not released. But nonetheless, there is supplemental water that will be released, and the authority is releasing flows to augment the river.
And reclamation is purchasing water from the authority to augment flows for the river to be in compliance, and reclamation to be in compliance with the 2016 biological opinion, which you should all be aware of. We're part of that 2016 biological opinion, and again, we talked earlier about the 6,000 acre feet of relinquishing credit. Water that would be released from Avenue is water that has been reserved by the United States Bureau of Reclamation for its prior and paramount program for the 6 Middle Rio Grande floodplain. And what that is a program that Reclamation has been doing for a number of years, dating back to the early 80s, as it is scheduled for the 6 Middle Rio Grande pueblos as to how much water is to be released in any given month for irrigation within those pueblos. That water is diverted from the main stem of the Rio Grande in the middle valley and is managed within the NRGCD and pueblos and reclamation. At this point in time, there continues to be accounting of impacts to San Juan Channel water above the odor index gauge. I think that's an important fact that is just reality at this point in time. The San Juan Channel is being impacted, and therefore there will be an adjustment that has to be made in compact accounting once we get to the end of the staff has been active in multiple fronts, but specifically in discussions with the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, the Albuquerque Burlington County Water Utility Authority, District 6 state engineer staff and the state engineer, the Army Corps of Engineers who operate the releases, and the United States Bureau of Reclamation. These discussions have involved the potential of current and future operations through the end of this year, and including potential formal agreements with the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District and the Albuquerque Burlington County Water Utility Authority to assign emission compact relinquishment credits to, in essence, pay back the impacts of the Rio Channel Safety Association operation. Slightly different than the storage of water that the staff requested back in March. This is an assignment of allocated credit, relinquishment credit to the commission for the purposes of offsetting the impacts of RCA. And those agreements certainly aren't drafted, but as the action item on the agenda suggests, is that staff continue to move forward in discussions and negotiations on those issues. So with that, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I do recommend approval of the requested action on the agenda to continue with the negotiations and what the staff is doing. And I will come back at the September meeting to update the commission, chairman of the commission, to the status of this negotiations and potentially agreements for the commission's consideration. Mr. Chairman, with that,
Thank you. Question, comment?
Who will be, I guess, the result of not going forward with the ACC or the district?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Sanchez, as I understand the question, is say we don't, the commission does not take that action. I can't speak for what the parties that have been impacted by these diversions would do. I can speculate, but I think that would be inappropriate for me to suggest that. I would say that the parties, and they could maybe speak for themselves, have been good faith partners in working with state engineer staff, with the commission, and working through this extraordinary situation. I think that the big turning point here is the Rio Grande Conservancy District is going to run out of water, and that's going to be a major change in how San Juan Channel water is looked at. I believe from the state engineer's perspective, certainly from the Albuquerque Glen County Water Utility Authority's perspective. But I would just emphasize that today and in discussions yesterday, both entities and in reclamation have indicated a willingness to continue to work through what is really an extraordinary and difficult situation.
So even under the scenario that the ordinary circumstance, are you looking at this kind of nuclear one policy, or are you kind of thinking about the prevailing condition in the future if this would have other like future application?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Sanchez, as I understand the question, is does this set precedent? Is this how we're going to have to do it? This is not the first time an operation like this, or an assignment, or an allocation of relinquishing credit has been used in the past. The staff has been able to identify at least 4 separate instances where this kind of operation has occurred. Broad sense of the word, and each time it has been done differently. What's unique, I think, this time, probably 2, maybe 3 things that are unique here. One is we are in, obviously, interstate litigation, and so Texas is going to be putting a magnifying glass on whatever we do, and that was my purpose to come forward as the engineer advisor to work this commission with accounting. Absolutely essential, and it's absolutely essential to get it done. That means that's very. I mean, that's my charge. Second, in the past, RCAA has had an ability to be able to get money to be able to pay to actually have wet water offsets. That is not available this year. Third, the native flows have been so far off the charts that there really hasn't been an ability to manage those native flows in a way that an alternative administration can fit within what flows are going on. We essentially lost the river in June, and that's, I can look through that. So given that, this is the 5th time we're looking at it, and I think it's a fair question, does this set precedent? In conversation with staff, what we believe is we're just trying to get through this year. And we've got 3 months at least to the irrigation season, and then we've got a couple months after that we'll go back with how that looks. But we think that there should be maybe a more formalized procedure, and I guess from the commission's perspective, in terms of how relinquishing credit may be assigned, otherwise managed, and that's something that I think, as time allows, staff would investigate and present to this commission for their consideration. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gonzalez, I guess I would frame it a little bit differently. we're in a crisis. I mean, MRGCD is in the next 2 weeks likely to no longer have stored surface water to release for their constituents. They're not going to have water. That's not a crisis. I don't know what is. With regards to ABCWA, they've been managing their supply with the ability to conjunctively manage with groundwater. And so they've taken a longer view, and they're different operations, but they've been able to, they have water, and they're using that water to help rest their wells. How they bring those wells back on for the supply is an ongoing assessment, and in my discussions with Mr. Starr, those just, I don't know, it's not quite daily, but there have been changes over the last couple of weeks in terms of shut down, their surface water, still keep that water for future years, and then use their wells, or they going to continue to release at a lower rate and keep the surface water plant up and going, so that assists in being able to keep water through the system, but that means they're going to do wells on. Those are decisions that are going to be made by the authority and are difficult decisions to make, but I would, in that instance, I think this ABCWA has two different sources of water to draw from for these kinds of situations.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make sure that I've got this framed right in my mind. The water available to RCAA, Geothermal Safety Association, in priority is native flows in the Rio Grande. And currently, it's calculated based on the flows that we think they get. Did I hear you say that the flow at the Puente was 20 CFS?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, it dropped below 20 CFS in around the end of June, and Brian, it's bounced around between, I'd say, 15 and 20 since then. The Brian,
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, Secretary Wade, it's currently at 18.7 CFS. The last month posted on the USGS website, been consistently around anywhere from 15 to 18 CFS for quite some time, consistently under 20 for most of the summer. We did a few short-lived spikes due to some spotty rainfall in the upper basin, but consistently it's been under 20 for most of the summer. Mr. Chairman, maybe this is a question directly to Brian. What has RCAA been devoted?
So, diversionary amounts based on the water rights. Just note, these are the most senior non-potable water rights in the state. 3 ditches have 1,600 priority. The most junior in the lower section range up to 1,735. So just to give you an idea how old these are. In northern New Mexico, where it manages the water, a lot of the acequias and communities up there, if they have a late 1800 priority, that's senior. These guys are 1,600 to 1,735, and especially low altitude to the confluence of the Rio Chama and the Rio Grande. So it also involves moving water to a federal OK Liga, which shared the service district one of the 1,600 priority. Right. So there hasn't been much available flow. The diversionary right is 140 CFS. Combined with all the acequias in that stretch below Abiquiu and the confluence, it's going to determine if there's 100 CFS in the system available below Abiquiu that would suffice diversionary requirements. The trigger point for curtailment for the past 8 years, I've been involved in the curtailment for the past 8 to 10 years.
There's been 50 CFS at the Lepenta gauge. We went into curtailment status in early June this year, the earliest ever since I've been managing the system. Curtailment ranges from 50% complete reduction in the upper basin, and in the lower basin this year we started at 70% curtailment, 70% of the maximum allowable rate of flow. Each ditch in the lower section has a set CFS amount that can divert continually. We cut them to 70% of that flow and 2 days off. Subsequently, flows didn't improve on the Rio Chama, so we went to an additional curtailment of 50% reduction in the lower section plus an additional 2 days off. So, not an additional 2 days off, but the same 2 days off. So we kind of manage their diversion strictly, try to limit their depletions in the system to what's available at the point. We kind of roughly gauge what their consumptive use is of the diversions using the USGS gauge below altitude and the USGS Chamita gauge. So if we keep that difference between those two gauges in line with La Fuente, then we're doing pretty good. Where we protect all the other waters in the river. This year has been very unique, very dismal, where we've seen huge depletions in the system on top of curtailment. So for saying we shut down all the ditches in the lower section, we were still seeing 100 CFS depletion in that system, even without if we were limit diversions that much. So it was a unique year. We had an average of 15 staff members, including myself, out there daily, including weekends, to ensure the protection of the water and to keep the divergence depletions of the RCA in check. Been a huge part of our teamwork here, running depletion models almost daily, going out and doing physical measurements to verify USGS gauge flows, involved in meetings with RCA and the AN. So we're curtailing the entire basin, not just the lower section. And additional answer to Commissioner Sanchez' question is, what if this relief district credit isn't available to the RCAA, at least to priority administration? Then we would have to physically shut down almost every ditch from Espanola to Chama. From diverting, the only thing that would be available for diversion is the native flows measured at La Fuente, which are 18.7 CFS right now, minus losses to get that water down there to the diversions. The three senior ditches, their diversion amounts, normal diversion amounts, add up to 47. So in essence, we'd have to shut down the entire system without this relief credit available, which would be a huge detriment, culturally, economically, public welfare, and so forth. So this is a really part component of the system, and I want to applaud Jennifer from the B of R and Mike from the MRGCD and John from the Water Authority and working with the ISC and OSC and coming up with these alternative methods and collaboratively trying to work to get us through this season. And maybe going forward, we can use this as a basis for, as Director Longer said, going forward, a more unified and approach to handling these unique years. Yes, it's a difficult question to answer. Mr. Chairman, do you think it would be beneficial to hear from one utility authority or your constituency district your reclamation concerns, I look at the water available to RCAA is native flow. And that is 18 CFS, which is by the time it gets to RCAA, it's probably much less than that. There is the San Juan Tama water that is in the river, but not available to RCAA. There is supplemental water that is in the river, but not available to RCAA. And there is the DFP water that is in the river, but is not available to RCAA. So there's a lot of opportunities for other users to be impacted by RCAA appropriating water over and above the native flows. And I think that if there's a salient point that each of these agencies would like to make, I think it's important for us to hear that. And we would limit it to just a couple of minutes.
You could certainly do that in a very brief manner. Other comments, yes.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, members of the commission. My name is Mark Hammond. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the New England District. And I'd first like to say that Alvaro has a lot of room in it right now, so we have some flexibilities to do a number of things in the future under some hopefully good runoff conditions if the annual predictions are correct going into this fall and winter. We are a pivotal piece of infrastructure there in the Rio Chama. It's positioned above altitude, but it lends itself to a lot of opportunities to deregulate and do a number of great things, not only for water operations, for irrigation purposes, but also for environmental and recreational purposes. So there are a number of benefits in the Rio Chama Basin over the years. We will continue to be a partner, strong partner with the city engineer and the ISC and trying to work through this process. We do have some other impacts on the Middle Valley that when the district runs out of water for its normal operations, we will be able to call strict DEP operations. And so another agency that will be keeping a close eye on this operation is the Bureau of Indian Affairs on behalf of the Rio Grande Pueblos to ensure that this last block of storage that has been reserved for what would be termed the senior water right in the basin, even more senior than what Brian was speaking of for the lower ditches on the Rio Chama. That process was reserved for assuring that the 6 kilometers on Pueblo suffer no shortages on the Frank lines. And so, but with this operation, that reclamation and utilities really are working to advance also helps the entire basin and the biological opinion partners, of which NYUCD is one, New Mexico State Commission is another, as well as reclamation. So hopefully keep sufficient flows in the Middle Valley to avert another crisis situation where the entire river would dry below understood and possibly extricate a number of southern minnows below that point. At a very critical time when we've been able to operate throughout the majority of the year with very minimal drying on the ground. It was good at a time when just prior to when they do the official measurement points on the river to determine the health and welfare of the southern minnow under the DL. It would be very, a very drastic change in the river system can have a very good occurrence effect on the status of the species. So I want to commend recognition and the utility authority for being able to and willing to step up and do some additional creative opportunities with the water that we do have. And we will continue to work closely with all parties to make sure we can get through this year. And with an eye towards the possibility of being able to manage a decent runoff, possibly this coming spring, in a manner that could reimburse both the MRDCD with some interest credits as well as perhaps the utility funding. And you be a party in that discussion. Appreciate the opportunity to address the commission.
Thank you very much. Reclamation?
Okay, just very quickly, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to quickly echo Brian's comments about how well the agencies are working together in a very difficult year. Rio Grande doesn't have the benefit of having one agency in charge, like I think a lot of river systems do. There's either a federal agency, a state agency, or an irrigation district that the buck stops with. So sometimes I feel like we're in an experimental fishbowl and people are looking in to see if it's possible to run a river system this large without having anybody really in charge that the buck stops with. So just want to commend the ISC and all the water management agencies for getting at least to this point in a difficult year, and I have the confidence that we can get to the end without any major blow-ups that translates into lawsuits. So just echoing those sentiments.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the board and Secretary Blaine, Director Longworth, I'm John Stomp, the Chief Operating Officer for the Water Authority. And just to put a historical perspective on this, the Water Authority, as far as the city of Albuquerque, has been in a position to partner with many agencies over the years. We have provided hundreds of thousands of acre feet of our San Juan Chama water for multiple uses in the valley, including the Rio Chama Safety Association, for the silver mineral operations, for the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, and many others. We've managed our supplies in an effort to try to use our water to the best use for us to manage our water resources to protect the basin, but also to help others. This is another opportunity for us to help others. We were approached by the Interstate Street Commission and Secretary Blaine to have an opportunity to help the Chama Safety Boys that we've been helping out for many, many years. We have an outstanding relationship with them, so this is an opportunity for us to do. I do want to clarify a couple of things. One is ABQ is authorized to store native water, even though we have not a permit to do that. Our plans are to store native water into the future, so we want to make sure that that's clear to this board, that we've been working on that for 5 years or more. I don't even tell you how long it takes to get things done sometimes, but we are working towards that effort. Our goal is to make ABQ a shared resource with the Interstate Street Commission for a compact pool, potentially in the future, and others. And we are sharing that resource right now. So again, we're in a position now because we've been managing our resources to be able to help others, and we want to continue to do that. So that's really what this is about. We're anticipating that if you approve this, that we would have a separate agreement before you, if we could successfully negotiate that for dry water, that the water utility authority can store it for the future when native water is available to be stored in the attitude. So again, thank you very much. I'm glad to answer any questions, but we're happy to be here. We are working with Reclamation, as we spoke about earlier. We are very concerned about the section of Albuquerque Reach drying up this summer, particularly when emergencies out of supply. And so we are working to keep the Albuquerque Reach a little wet and others downstream as Reclamation's water continues downstream. So we're releasing 20,000 acre feet of water to Reclamation, and we're also stocking up some of the losses as we're going to continue to operate at a smaller amount so that we can protect all of us in the Middle Valley partners. We're all partners in this together. Nobody's going to win from any silver mineral litigation. And that 2016 DO is an important part of what everybody has worked on in this basin since 1996. And we don't want to be exposing ourselves or opening ourselves up to litigation when that all gets unraveled. And we all do work together very well. I know we have our fights, but the truth is we all work together very well. And we're proud to be partners with the station.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments?
That is one of the comments that I feel that's our objectives, to be cooperative and finding all these issues and then ideally these up questions and the, I guess, questions that raised. But I guess the question I have regarding the relinquishment of credit, is there a valuation for that credit? How much credit you relinquishing? Is there a value in that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Sanchez, with the staff, to date, I'm not aware of a specific dollar amount put on to the credit itself. My understanding of how the credit actually return what changes in their cheap power. So it's probably an upper range for municipal industrial use. I believe there's an intrinsic value of savings, indicating potential litigation, and the costs associated with that are it might be, the value might be to it as a municipality, and then in agriculture, there's kind of a range there. So, I think those are, we all know that, but I don't believe that there's a specific, let me check that. I'm unaware of any specific valuation of the relinquishment credit. And I'm looking over at my staff and I'm not seeing any valuation. So, does that answer your question?
Well, and I'm following up with that because I just want to make sure that anything we do that are $1,000 to the cost. But I guess I asked that in terms of yours, it does not have anti-dilution requirement.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Sanchez, that is an issue that has come up and we're evaluating.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Sanchez, in the past, there have been, that I'm aware of, two evaluations in, two instances in which there was an attempt to value in one valuation of relinquishment credit water. And the first, and I'm just going to mention this, it's different water, but it's going to be the purpose of that water unit. There's an agreement for payment to the Bureau of Reclamation of a set amount for the purposes of providing water for over what we talked about, mineral water that has been discussed here before. That's a specific purpose and price that is agreed to be paid for that water. The second instance was in the discussions over the value of relinquishment credit that will be provided to the retail corporation. I don't know if you remember that. That was a couple of years ago. So those are the only two instances. We don't, it's, the value of that water is not monetized. It is a unique attribute of the operation of the compact. That water is allocated by the Rio Grande Compact Commissioner, and he does so for the best interest of the entire state of New Mexico and the people of the state to, in his professional judgment, provide the maximum benefit for that water. So it's not monetized. It's used principally to there are two purposes that can be used to further compact compliance, or which this is what, is being proposed in this instance, if the commission agrees to go forward with this recommendation to, direct staff to enter into these negotiations. So that's the way it's been done, but essentially the evaluation is made when the compact commissioner allocates the water, which was done in 2013, 14, and 2015, and not here. So that was made for these purposes, as Director Vaughn was pointed out in the presentation, that there were the three purposes for that water that when the allocation was made. They made it cool storage, keeping the compact accounting whole. That's the RCA offset depletions purpose, and the third purpose is for providing species water in the middle.
I think the third purpose is look for opportunities to improve operations.
We have a big long discussion here. Is there another question? Mr. Vice Chair, I would move approval
of staff to enter into negotiations with the Middle Rio Grande Service and the agency that may authority to assign the question credits in order to offset the issues incurred on the Rio Channel during the 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Somebody will holler at Chairman.
I just gave you 5 minutes warning.
We'll go to item number 7. Marcus.
ISC staff is requesting commission approval of amendment number 3, to contract number 9055 with West Consultants Inc. to increase the contract cost ceiling from $500,000 to $725,000. The New Mexico Interstate Street Commission approved the contractors for which type of contractor services to be used by this ISC at the May 18, 2018 meeting. This list included the contract with West Consultants Inc. Staff has closed out fiscal year 2018 and has determined that an increase to this contract's cost ceiling is required in order for the contractor to provide services for the ISC approved FY 2019 Rio Grande and Pecos River. Staff is requesting commission authorization to enter into, execute, and submit to DFA for final approval amendment number 3 to contract 19055 in order to increase the contract cost ceiling from $500,000 to $725,000 for fiscal year 2019. Any questions?
Any questions for Marcus? Do I hear a motion to accept the recommendation?
So moved.
Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Moving on to the Petro Settlement Organization Roadway.
Morning, Chairman Sanchez, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be with you as always. I am going to attempt to project a brief presentation. I also have printed versions that I will pass around for your reference, and then one for your beautiful one too as well, Michelle. Okay, hopefully the projector will come on. The last time I was with you all was back in June, presenting our fiscal year 19 work plans, and probably you will remember quite a bit of those work plans is related to the settlement augmentation well fields that ISC owns and operates on the Lower Pecos. And because we have so many new commissioners, and because there's been some discussion about possible need for pumping
for the 2019 irrigation season, it seemed like it might be worth me giving you all just a very brief presentation on those well fields. What are they? They're important. What do they do? So that's what I'm here to do, and I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I know we're behind schedule, and then I'll happily take any questions. Okay. All right, so the purpose of those augmentation well fields, as you all know, the state was required to construct them as part of the 2003 Pecos Settlement Agreement. And the idea was, in order to have the ability to supply additional water to the Carlsbad Irrigation District, but in addition, to have the capability to pump some well fields to deliver to the state line, given a shortfall condition under the Pecos River Compact. So the well fields themselves have those two purposes. They are located, the primary well field, the larger well field is the Seven Rivers well field, and that is located right at Brantley Reservoir. So the benefit of the location there is that we can pump directly into the reservoir. The other smaller well field is the Lake Arthur well field, located about 20 miles north on the Pecos River. And as you all know, this is only possible because of the unique hydrology that exists on the Pecos. Because it is an artesian aquifer, a confined aquifer, we are not pumping, you can pump adjacent to the river and not be pulling water directly out of the river. So this is water that would otherwise eventually discharge to the river, but we're accelerating that process by pumping it from the artesian into the river. So this is a solution that is possible on the Pecos that really couldn't be possible on the Rio Grande because of the hydrology. Included here in this handout is just a real brief overview of the infrastructure that ISC owns. So Interstate Stream Commission, between 2003 when the Pecos Settlement Agreement was signed and 2009 when it went into full implementation, the commission worked on developing these well fields. There were a number of conditions precedent that had to be met for the settlement to go to full implementation, and one of them was the final construction of these well fields. So we own 10 wells in the Seven Rivers area and 3 wells at Lake Arthur. In addition to those wells, there are 4 wells at Seven Rivers that belong to Seven Rivers Inc. that are hooked into our system that we also have access to in case we need them, and 2 wells in Lake Arthur that belong to John Nelson that we can use there if we need them as well. There's a couple of important things that I'd like to point out on this slide. I've listed the capacity of the wells here. The total design capacity, as you'll see, is 23,700 GPM. However, when I look at the records of what the well fields produced in the past, they don't quite produce that much. And that may be because once all the wells are fired on, there's, competition between wells or drawdown issues. So one of the things I've been looking at very closely and anticipating potentially needing to use these wells in the coming year or two is how do they really perform, and how do we maximize their use in the most efficient means possible while managing the aquifer intelligently. And also just to note that the pipelines are significant. There's over 10 miles of pipeline that range from 12-inch to 42-inch at Seven Rivers, and over 4 miles of pipeline at Lake Arthur, and that's all infrastructure that the ISC owns and has installed. I've included also maps, a little more close-up maps of each of the well fields. This first one is Seven Rivers and all of the ISC-owned wells, as well as the Seven Rivers wells that we have access to are labeled. And you'll notice that there are 2 outfalls right on Brantley Reservoir, those orange squares. And the next map is a map of the Lake Arthur well field with the 3 ISC wells and the 2 Nelson wells shown as those black dots. A big part of what was in our work plans was related to the monitoring that we do out there. And now we would do this anyway, but it's also required as part of our agreement with Seven Rivers.
we entered in order to construct these well fields a 50-year agreement with Seven Rivers Inc. In order to install these well fields on their property, and one of their concerns was carefully monitoring the aquifer. So there are 13 locations at which we collect water level and water quality data monthly. And at 3 of those sites, we also collect soil quality samples on an annual basis. And then in addition to those 13 locations, there are 35 locations at which we collect water level data, only no water quality data. But that helps us just get a picture of the aquifer and how our pumping impacts local conditions. The next map shows both the monitoring, what's called on this map, the monitoring wells, which are the water quality wells, and then the extended monitoring wells, that's the water level only wells. And that gives you an idea of sort of the area in which we're keeping an eye on the aquifer. And that data is collected, like I said, monthly, and is available, the water level data is available on our website. If you ever want to take a look at it, it's there for you all in the public. How have we used this well field? So since it was completion in 2009, the well field's been used in 2011, 12, and 13. So some of you remember that was a terrible drought, and those were the 3 years in which this well field has been used to augment Carlsbad project supply. And so in those years, we did not meet the targets for the Carlsbad project that were set by the settlement. And when those targets are not met, we're required to pump to augment CID supply. And this table shows a summary of what had been pumped. And I'd like to point out, since we pumped since 2013, and I started here in 2014, and most of the Pecos Bureau has started since me, we're immersing ourselves in all of this information because none of us were here when we actually operated this system. Fortunately, we have some excellent contractors that have been around for a long time that we depend on and are really knowledgeable. I also thought it was worth including this next table, which might seem not relevant to the well field at all. But this table shows a summary of releases by the Carlsbad Irrigation District to the state line. So one of the big problems that New Mexico faced a while back was how to get water around Carlsbad project to the state line. It's difficult to deliver to Texas when you have reservoirs at the bottom of your system that capture all flows. So the challenge was, how do we work something out that benefits everyone? So the water that we pumped for CID, and that was in that previous table of total of almost 44,000 acre feet, benefited them. It also benefited the state line because it increased return flows from the district. But as part of the entire agreement, they also agreed to deliver the water rights purchased by the state in CID to the state line. And so this summary table of deliveries since implementation of the settlement shows that in total, 75,000 acre feet made it to the state line that otherwise would not have. So this agreement and those well fields, as part of that agreement, have significantly contributed to our state line deliveries. And that's not only because of wet water releases from the reservoir, it's also because of reduced depletions related to the purchase of water rights throughout the basin by the state, and as I mentioned, the increased return flows from CID from the water that we pump for them. We set out, the Supreme Court said in 1988, New Mexico is under-delivered under the compact to Texas on average 10,000 acre feet a year for 30 years, over 30 years. And so the goal of the settlement was to increase flows to the state line by at least 10,000, if not 15,000 acre feet. And it's been very successful, and the well fields are a big part of that. So how are we doing? This plot shows the gray bar, which is the first in each grouping by date, is the targets that are set by the settlement. Those are the targets that if we don't meet them, and I'm saying target for Carlsbad project supply, if we don't meet their supply, we're required to turn on the wells. And you can see very clearly here how in May of 2011, we did not hit that target. And then through 2013, we're well below that target. Part of the concern currently is that it's been incredibly dry, as Director Longworth has mentioned in multiple topics throughout the meeting today and through the previous number of months. And if you look at, say, 2012, we had 2% of average inflows into Santa Rosa, so really dry conditions. Folks on the Pecos are very cognizant of that and wanting to plan for the future. So that's part of why we've been getting together with the settlement parties to develop additional mechanisms to handle drought in the basin. At this point, the current projection for September 1st looks pretty good. That's the red bar at the end here. We anticipate at this moment there's about 100,000 acre feet of combined storage in Pecos reservoirs. CIE will probably use another 20 to 25 through the end of their irrigation season. I anticipate 10 to 15 of evaporative losses through the end of the year. That gets us to between 65 and 70,000 at the end of the calendar year. The concern is if we don't get some good monsoon rains this fall or some real snowpack, and last year we really didn't get good snowpack on the Pecos either, but we could be in trouble for next season, and that probably wouldn't be the earlier target dates, but the later target dates. And so at this point, it's too early to say. And one of the things that I've been getting a lot of advice and support from Director Long on is thinking about longer time frame projection tools, how you look out farther at what could be coming and plan ahead. So that's something we're talking about a lot. Current forecast for the next 3 months is equal chances of above or below preset on the Pecos throughout the state. So we could be, come the end of the year, we could be in great shape. But planning worst case scenario, we might not be in good shape, and that was part of why I wanted to come today to just educate you all a little bit on the well fields. So looking forward, we're currently, our bureau is really focusing on this. We're working on reviewing and updating our startup checklist and general O&M plans. All of our staff is getting updated safety training in compliance with OSHA regulations. We have lockout, tagout procedures and all kinds of stuff with our vaults down there. We're also really focusing on improving our coordination with our on-site contractors. Like I said, we have a few folks who've worked on these well fields for years. We're really glad to have them. And we're really trying to build and improve our working relationship with Seven Rivers, given that this well field is on their property. It's critical that we work well with them, especially if we need to fire everything on and things are going well there. And then, as I mentioned, and as Dr. Long just mentioned, we've been meeting with the Pecos settlement parties, sort of thinking about what are other solutions. And I think it's critical that we communicate and coordinate well with them, as well as other locals on the ground down there as we prepare for possible training stuff on next year. So that concludes my presentation. I hope it was helpful and informative for you all, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. There's no request for action from the commission today.
Thank you, Henry. Any questions? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
The last item on our agenda is to set our next meeting date. What?
Mr. Chairman, our normal date would be the third Thursday in September, which is the 20th. And Secretary and I will be on travel and international work group. It's been going on the last 2 years. So we'll be in Mexico, which going back to the 23rd to the 23rd. The rest of that week is preparation and we're going to have our legislative finance committee meeting on the 27th. That's going to be focused on FIRA. It's going to be down in somewhere between 11 and Columbus. So that sort of eliminates that week as well. After that, the first and second is our interim water resource committee meeting that we focus on water. After that, the third, fourth, and fifth, my schedule, those 3 days, Thursday.
Commissioner, any conflicts in the
October?
Yes.
That's balloon, getting ready for balloon fiesta.
It's the 2 days before the increase. Try and find a hotel room. Okay, I can fly.
What's the number? Sometime in the week before that third, and then September, the week is 15th. Is that what you're thinking?
Is the 10th of September?
Yes. And so, if we did it the week before, on February, I got 13th to 14th.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Court, the 13th and 14th, I'm scheduled to be at a meeting with the staff. With the San Carlos Apache tribe on the AWSA. Prior to that, 12 in the morning and 11 afternoon. Right around the same. Our 17th, available.
Any preferences? You say the 17. 17.
Yeah, I think that looks significant.
And you said the 18th also?
I believe, yes, the people will be on the 19th, the day next.
Thank you for the word.
I'll find out first.
Say what?
Looking to arrange the schedule on the 18th. I can make the 18th.
On the 18th is a 7 day, right now it's currently scheduled a 7 days and states meeting, related to the, draft contingency planning, for the day, but, I know that that's, scheduled.
Is October 3rd too close to the interest? It's the weekend. I know that hotels go exponentially through the roof, like just like they do at Texas Tech graduation weekend. A hotel room that's normally 130 is all of a sudden $300. And I can drive up on my phone. That is not a big deal.
So looking to work with the week of that 10th,
For September.
or September.
That's going morning, 12, that afternoon, actually that afternoon, it's going to be with recognition of the staff that we do.
So you could meet that morning.
Yeah.
That would work for me. Morning. Or if you got a, bunch of presentation, and there's some committees that you already have. So it's a matter of,
We're going to look for September 5th.
they're not gonna be, all the guys.
We're going after the room, Crystal. We like the 18th of October.
Seventeenth is the association of resident stakeholders.
About October 19th. That would be consolidating September and October. So the conference on here.
Yes, there's scheduled for association of resident state engineers on here in Mexico is hosting that. So we'll do September.
Right. October 19th, the Friday, everybody good? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make just maybe it's an FYI or an alert, pending again of what happened in Colorado. I'm not saying there will be, but we just wanted to make sure we're going with that.
Any issues that we discussed today, making everything for the next week. And then we also completed the agreement that was going to be worked on in item number 6. Is that just timing and either the agreement problem or consideration? I think that taking that thing out is a long ways. We can always have a telephonic meeting.
Yeah, I think that with regards to the EWA grant and the situation, then the principles that additional, I can talk to you about I'm not comfortable with that. That said, conditions are going to change, and the person that the changes to the JPA are related to non projects. That's going to take a long time to get that. The commission will approve that, get that process going. That's going to take some time. So I don't know how sensitive that is. I can certainly legislate.
I don't know, I'm asking, Chairman, expression concern about the schedule that's going on and the date for us to be responsible for delaying what we heard.
But I think the delays are about the non-unit, not the unit. The delays are about the unit. Yeah.
No, but I don't think we're going to do that.
That's great.
All right. October 19th, so motion to adjourn?
Yes.
This one second, all in favor, aye? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Safe travels, everyone.